His name is Chamath Palihapitiya. He is the billionaire co-owner of the Golden State Warriors. That's the NBA basketball team that plays in California. That's why they're called the Golden State Warriors. Don't know why they're not called the San Francisco Warriors where they played, or the Oakland Warriors where they used to play. We have the Oakland Raiders, but I guess they want to be called the Golden State Warriors. Whatever. He's the co-owner, billionaire as I mentioned. And in a podcast, he was expressing his sentiment about the Muslim Uyghurs in China. And as you know, the NBA has been criticized for doing business in China with Nike. Nike does a great deal of business in China. And one of the NBA players, his name is Enes Kanter, now it's Enes Freedom, has criticized the league. We'll get to that in just a second. But here is Mr. Palihapitiya expressing his sentiments about the Muslim Uyghurs.
Nobody cares about. Let's be honest. Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs. Okay, you bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard.
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth. Okay, of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay, of all the things that I care about, it is below my line.
Disappointing.
Not only did he say the Uyghurs were below his level, he also said China is not, wait for it, a dictatorship. Are you kidding me?
Damn!
So I'm not even sure that China is a dictatorship the way that you want to call it that. Again, I think
communist country that's in the name.
Look, you have to understand, Jason, there are a set of checks and balances here on China that, at the end of the day, I don't think that I have the moral absolutism to judge China. And I would say that when NATO is silent, the United Nations is silent, all of Western Europe is silent, and America is effectively silent, that this issue may be small data points being extrapolated in a way to create a narrative that maybe not be true. And if it is true, Jason, there's a responsibility for those body politics to do something, because that is the early warning signal that the rest of the world uses to say, okay, hold on, let me reprioritize my list of things.
Now, this man is from Sri Lanka, a refugee from persecution, where in Sri Lanka, Christians are being persecuted. This is from the BBC. Christian persecution at near genocide levels. First sentence. The report comes less than 2 weeks after the bombings at 3 churches in Sri Lanka on Easter Sunday. This is 2019. The persecution of Christians in parts of the world is at or near genocide levels, according to a report ordered by the UK Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. Christians were the most persecuted group, the report found. The report continued, the main impact of genocidal acts against Christians is exodus, and that Christianity faced being wiped out from parts of the Middle East. It further warned the religion is at risk of disappearing in some parts of the world, pointing to figures which claim Christians in Palestine, actually there's no country called Palestine, but I digress, represent less than 1.5% of the population, while in Iraq they have fallen from 1.5 million before 2003 to less than 120,000. End of quote. And Mr. Palihapitiya, who left Sri Lanka because of persecution, doesn't care about persecution in China. One wonders why.
Since 2014, China has imprisoned at least 630 imams and other religious figures in its crackdown in the mainly Muslim Xinjiang region. The research by the Uyghur Human Rights Project also says that 18 clerics died in detention or shortly thereafter. They're accused of propagating extremism and separatism. China is believed to have put more than 1 million Uyghurs in prison-like camps. Beijing denies those allegations, saying they are re-education facilities designed to stamp out extremism. Joel Gunter from the BBC's Asia Desk explained the findings.
From China's point of view, and what we hear from testimony from people who are in Xinjiang and from the relatives of imams and other religious leaders, is that imams have significant cultural influence within the Uyghur community within Xinjiang. And they believe that the imams and religious figures are targeted specifically to try and break that influence and to control that influence, and ultimately to sort of break the religious traditions of the Uyghurs and the lineage of that Muslim religious tradition.
Now, as to Mr. Palihapitiya's assertion that nobody cares except for the guy he was interviewing, that's been polled. Americans, in fact, do care. This is from the Washington Post. Headline, the Trump administration sanctioned China for detaining 1 million Uyghurs. Here's what Americans think. Quote, we looked at public views of China's human rights abuses in Xinjiang. About 11 million ethnic Uyghurs, most of whom are Muslim, live in the northwestern region of Xinjiang. Since 2017, China has imprisoned at least 1 million of them in internment camps, along with other ethnic minorities, calling them a security threat to ethnic Hans, who make up the nation's majority. Those in the camps have been subjected to forced sterilizations, religious restrictions, ideological re-education, increased surveillance, and forced labor, end of quote. Now, how do Americans feel about all of this? In our survey, more than half, 54% of respondents report being aware of the Uyghurs' detention in camps. Those respondents were asked what options they would support in response. More than half, 55.9% of Americans favored enacting sanctions, the only option that garnered a majority, end of quote. This is from the Pew Research, March 4, 2021. Headline, most Americans support tough stance towards China on human rights, economic issues. Amid crackdowns in Hong Kong, continued persecution of ethnic minorities such as the Muslim Uyghur population, and detaining dissidents, Americans too have taken notice. Fully 90% of adults in the U.S. say the Chinese government does not respect the personal freedoms of its people. This perspective is shared among large majorities of Americans across age, education, and political groups. But Mr. Palihapitiya says Americans don't give a rip. False, Americans give a rip, a big rip. Quote, and Americans want more focus on human rights, even at the expense of economic ties, in bilateral relations with China. When asked whether the U.S. should prioritize economic relations in China or promote human rights in China, 70% of Americans choose human rights, even if it potentially harms economic relations with China. And it cuts across party lines. Quote, about 7 in 10 Democrats and Republicans say the U.S. should promote human rights in China, even if it harms economic relations between the two. Come again, Mr. Palihapitiya?
Nobody cares about. Nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs. Okay, you bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard.
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth. Okay, of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay, of all the things that I care about, it is below my line.
Disappointing.
And the Pew Research quotes a man aged 30 who says the following. When I think of China, the first thing that comes to mind is the oppressive measures it takes on those within its borders, especially the plight of Uyghur Muslims, but also the restrictions placed by the Chinese government on free speech and dissent by its citizens. Now, after his insensitive comment came the walk back from his insensitive comment. Here's what he now says. In re-listening to this week's podcast, I recognize that I come across as lacking empathy. I'll say. I acknowledge that entirely. As a refugee, my family fled a country with its own set of human rights issues. So this is something that is very much a part of my lived experience. To be clear, my belief is that human rights matter, whether in China, the United States, or elsewhere. Full stop, end of quote. But you know what's lacking in his statement? The words, I'm sorry. I apologize. I apologize for saying such harmful, hurtful things. I apologize for my arrogance. I apologize for having the audacity to flee a country because of its persecution of human rights, while not caring about a country that is engaging in the persecution of human rights. I didn't hear that, did you? Well, little steps for little feet. I'm Larry Elder, and this has been the Larry Elder Show for Epic Times. See you next time. Larry Elder here, and I've got some great news for you. If you're tired of the censorship in this country, then you're in luck. You can go over to epictv.com and watch honest programs that don't spin the facts. EpicTV.com is a brand new, no censorship video platform where you can watch not only my show, but other deep documentaries, great program, wholesome movies that you can watch with your entire family. So head over to epictv.com. I'll see you there.